Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, my fellow Chiebits. No matter when you see this video, I wish you a very good day and many, many good days to come. So here I am, once again, to bring all of you a weekly anime review of Fate Kleed. It's been a while since I made a video. It's been about 2-3 weeks since I made a review on Fate Kleed, and as I said in my weekly vlogs, I've been saying I didn't drop the series, I did not drop Fate Kleed, I was just letting content build up before I could talk about it. I even made a video explaining certain reasons why sometimes I don't put an episode review out, and that's kind of why. So yeah, as you all know, from the recent episodes we got, they have been good. They've been very good episodes of Fate Kleed, but when it comes to the core content, a lot of the episodes have been very slow-paced, and so I waited until a couple episodes built up until I decided to make a video on them. So here I am now, making a video on the recent events of Fate Kleed. So what really got me interested and invested and wanted me to sit down and make a video was the content we got in the latest episode. Oh my, the way everything got flipped on its head in the latest episode, it reminded me a lot of Fate Zero and Heaven's Feel. Both of these two different parts of the Fate franchise, you know, from the Nasuverse, just seeing these certain things that remind me of two of my favorite routes in Fate. For instance, the Fate Zero type stuff, and then also seeing, you know, Heaven's Feel, seeing it in this episode, stuff that reminds me of that, makes me just so happy. Because when it came down to the reveal of what the true objective of the main villains of the series is of Fate Kleed, I'm like, bro, this is so interesting, because they are using Kuritsugu logic. They're willing to sacrifice the few to save the many, and that's what they're doing. They're willing to sacrifice Miyu to save the entire world. And because of this, you have that Kuritsugu logic going on in this episode, and I'm like, bro, this is exactly just like that. And there's some other elements, too, that happened this episode that reminded me a lot of Heaven's Feel, which I'm not going to dive into those, because for one reason, don't want to spoil, since there's many of you that probably are watching Fate Kleed and have not actually read the visual novel route of Heaven's Feel, because, you know, spoiler reasons, and also we're waiting probably for the movie to come out for you to probably see the events of what happens. So yeah, I mean, just seeing some of these things in this episode, it made me quite hyped up, and I love the flip on letting us know that the villains are not necessarily the villains. They are actually, in a way, the good guys. And I like the way this was done. It lets us know that our crew, our cast of characters, like Ilya and them, they could be considered the villains. I mean, if we weren't following their perspective, and we weren't with them since the beginning of the series, we knew how their personalities were, honestly, we could say they're the villains of this arc. They've invaded someone's world, they've walked in this world, and then they're fucking everything up, they're messing with the plans, and then they're straight up trying to sacrifice the entire world just to save one girl, which is Miyu. And right there, I love the way this episode does that. It just presents it in a way to let us know that what is really more important. I mean, if you're in this position right now and you had to make a choice, like, do you save one girl, even though this one girl is your friend, your best friend, even a family member, okay? This one person is your best friend, family member, lover, whatever, but then you have the rest of the entire populace, maybe millions or billions of people still left alive. Are you going to sacrifice all of them and end the entire world and future generations of humanity just for this one person? Or will you sacrifice this one person for the greater good to save everyone else? What is the choice you make? And so, seeing Ilya and them invade this world, coming here to save Miyu, in a way, they are the villains. They're trying to actually destroy the world. That's exactly what they're doing. They're literally destroying the world if they save Miyu and they don't find another alternate to save Miyu and the world. So, because of that, I love the way this was set up in this episode, and allows us to kind of consider which is more important, who should be saved. And so it makes you wonder, how is the rest of Fate Kleed going to turn out? Because, I mean, the only way it's going to end is in a tragedy. I mean, look, either Miyu's going to have to die, which, to be honest, I highly doubt she'll die. Now, it's something that could happen in Fate. Fate does, you know, kill off characters and stuff. But, I mean, I'm just saying, I don't think Miyu necessarily will die. So if she does live, that would mean that the entire world is doomed to die. And that's fucked up. That's really fucked up. So, thinking on it from both sides of the perspective, like, okay, so what's gonna happen here? Like, who's gonna die? Who's gonna live? How is Ilya gonna come to terms with this and let an entire world just die like that? Like, how would you allow that? How would Ilya's character allow herself to doom an entire world to death just to save one person? So this adds some very interesting characterization and development for Ilya, depending on what route she takes in the future episodes. So besides that, let's get off of that. Let's talk about one of the big things that that happened in last week's episode and kind of in this episode. So, Ilya, she was trapped inside of a doll. And I watched last week's episode, and I just gotta be honest with you. I don't know how I legit would have talked about that episode. I mean, I would have been just saying Ilya got trapped in a doll, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, it reminds me of a certain ending route you can get in Fate Stay Night with Shiro. It reminds me of one of those endings. Once again, not going to spoil if you eventually are going to read the visual novel or play the games or whatever, but there is a certain ending in Fate Stay Night when I was playing the visual novel that you could get an ending with a doll type ending with Shiro. And I feel like last week's episode in the entirety with Ilya being inside of a doll, I feel like that was a reference to that. I could be wrong here, but, you know, Fate tends to reference other series and stuff, especially series like this that link with Fate Stay Night. So I could see, you know, maybe that doll scene with Ilya for last week's episode and this week's episode linking to a certain ending in Fate Stay Night with Shiro. So that was a pretty interesting episode, but overall, though, it was just a casual episode, and there wasn't really much depth to really talk about. I mean, there was little setups here and there, but for the most part, it was mainly just letting us know that, you know, some of our main characters, they've been trapped out of their bodies, and they're like in the similar situation as Ilya. They're in a doll, and then, you know, you have it to where Ilya's trying to figure out how she can move and walk around and be able to talk, and also be able to save her body and everybody else. So, I mean, majority of it was just setup, and there wasn't really major anything explosive happening in the episode, but it was still a good episode, and it carried on into this week's episode with Ilya trying to figure out how she can get back in her body, and eventually we found out if her body experiences any type of pain, or you hit this like symbol on her chest, you have it to where she could come back into her body. So that's kind of what she's trying to do for Ren and them right now in this episode, but it's not working out as planned. So I mean, yeah, the overall setup of these episodes, they've been very good. I've enjoyed what has happened. I enjoyed this episode a lot, thanks to it reminded me of Fate Zero and Heaven's Feel. Two of my favorite things when it comes to Fate. So just seeing those two references or things that remind me of that makes me completely happy. So yeah, how do you feel about Gil in this episode? You know, he was initiating and saying like, hey, we're about to go to, you know, war and all that. Do you think this is a good idea? I mean, if we do this, we're going to become the villains. We will be the villains if we continue on this path. Are you fine with that? How do you feel about this? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I love you all so much. You have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.